I never wanted to use my inheritance money to prove a point. Mom had left it to me with the instruction to build a beautiful life, and for 3 years I kept it safely invested, planning to use it for Emma's college education. But watching my 11-year-old daughter cry herself to sleep that night changed everything. The day had started normally enough. Sunday family dinner at my in-laws' house was a weekly tradition, one that my husband, Michael, insisted we maintain despite my growing discomfort with his sister Sarah's increasingly hostile behavior toward me. "She's just going through a rough time since her divorce," he'd say, making excuses for her snide comments and subtle digs. But today was different. It was Emma's birthday celebration, and Sarah had outdone herself in the worst possible way. "Open mine first," Sarah had chirped, handing Emma an elegantly wrapped box with a designer logo. My stomach tightened as Emma carefully pulled away the paper, revealing a limited edition tablet computer that I knew cost well over $1,000. It was exactly what Emma had been begging for, and exactly what Michael and I had decided was too expensive for an 11-year-old. "Oh my God, Aunt Sarah," Emma squealed, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is amazing." I watched Sarah's perfectly painted lips curl into a smile as she leaned down to whisper in Emma's ear, likely thinking I couldn't hear. But I did. Every word. "Your mom will never be able to afford something like this. But you can always count on Aunt Sarah to give you the nice things you deserve." The room seemed to freeze. I saw my mother-in-law Margaret's eyes widen slightly, but she quickly busied herself with the cake. My father-in-law, Thomas, suddenly became very interested in his phone. Michael, who had been across the room getting drinks, missed the entire exchange. Emma's smile faltered for just a moment, her eyes darting to me with a mix of confusion and something else. Was it shame? But Sarah was already moving on, loudly announcing that she'd also bought all the accessories and planned to take Emma shopping next weekend for a matching case. I sat there, my own carefully chosen gift, a handmade scrapbook filled with photos and memories from Emma's first 11 years, along with a modest charm bracelet, feeling increasingly inadequate in my lap. "Mom?" Emma's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Can I open yours next?" I handed her my gift, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Emma unwrapped it slowly, and I saw genuine pleasure light up her face as she turned the pages of the scrapbook. "Mom, this is so cool. Look, there's me at my first dance recital." But before she could get too excited, Sarah's voice cut through the moment. "Oh, how creative. It must be nice to have so much free time for crafts. I remember when I used to do things like that before I built my real estate empire." The fact that Sarah's empire consisted of exactly 2 rental properties she'd inherited from her ex-husband didn't seem to factor into her narrative. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of cake, ice cream, and more presents. Emma clutched her new tablet throughout, while my scrapbook sat forgotten on the coffee table. I noticed Sarah watching me with barely concealed satisfaction every time Emma showed off her expensive gift. It wasn't until bedtime that the real impact of Sarah's words became clear. I was tucking Emma in when I noticed her eyes were wet. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Emma bit her lip, looking more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. "Mom, are we poor?" My heart shattered. "No, baby, we're not poor. We're very comfortable. We just choose to spend our money differently than some people." "But Aunt Sarah said—" Emma hesitated. "What did Aunt Sarah say?" "She said you can't afford nice things like she can. And then she said I should ask to live with her sometimes because she could give me a better life." Emma's voice broke. "But I don't want to live with Aunt Sarah. I don't want kids at school to think we're poor." I held my daughter as she cried, feeling something shift inside me. For 3 years, I kept quiet about the inheritance from my mother, planning to surprise Emma with a fully funded college education when the time came. I tolerated Sarah's jabs and insults, telling myself they said more about her than about me. But this, using my daughter to hurt me, making her cry and question her security, this was the last straw. As Emma finally drifted off to sleep, I sat in the darkness of her room, my mind racing. In my home office, locked in the bottom drawer of my desk, was the documentation of my mother's inheritance, a sum that would make Sarah's empire look like pocket change. Mom had always taught me that money wasn't something to flaunt, that true wealth was measured in love and kindness. But maybe just this once it was time to break that rule. Not out of spite, but to protect my daughter from the emotional manipulation of someone who should have been supporting her instead of using her as a weapon. I kissed Emma's forehead and walked to my office, my decision made. Tomorrow I would make some calls. It was time to show Sarah exactly what poor looked like, and in the process, teach my daughter a different kind of lesson about wealth, worth, and family. The next morning, after dropping Emma off at school, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my mother's lawyer, requesting an urgent meeting. The second was to my financial advisor. The third was to Michael. "We need to talk about your sister," I said, my voice firm. "And this time, you need to really listen." An hour later, we sat in a quiet corner of the cafe near his office. I brought the tablet Sarah had given Emma, still in its box. "We're returning this," I said, sliding it across the table. Michael frowned. "Come on, Kate. I know it's expensive, but Emma loves it. Sarah was just trying to be nice." I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made the night before. Emma crying, confessing what Sarah had whispered to her. Michael's face changed as he listened, his usual defense of his sister crumbling. "She said what?" His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "And she suggested Emma should live with her." "Now you understand why the tablet's going back." I took a deep breath. "And there's something else you need to know, something I've been keeping quiet about." I told him about my mother's inheritance. His eyes widened as I mentioned the amount. "Why did you tell me?" "Mom left specific instructions. The money was for Emma's future, and she wanted me to be the sole decision maker." I reached across the table, taking his hand. "I trust you, Michael, but I needed to honor Mom's wishes." He nodded slowly. "I understand, but Kate, what does this have to do with Sarah?" "Your sister has been undermining me for years, making comments about money, suggesting I'm not good enough for you or this family. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause problems. But using our daughter, making her cry and question her security, that crosses a line." Michael was quiet for a long moment. "What are you planning?" "Nothing cruel," I assured him. "But it's time for Sarah to learn some hard lessons about judgment and assumptions. Will you support me?" He squeezed my hand. "After what she said to Emma, absolutely." The next Sunday dinner came quickly. As we pulled up to the in-laws' house, I noticed Sarah's new luxury SUV parked prominently in the driveway, her latest attempt to showcase her supposed wealth. "Ready?" Michael asked, helping Emma out of the car. I patted my bag, feeling the envelope inside. More than ready. Sarah was holding court in the living room, describing her latest real estate acquisition, a small fixer-upper she planned to flip. "It's all about having the vision," she was saying as we walked in. "And of course, the financial means to make it happen." Her eyes flickered to me. Not everyone understands the importance of investing in quality. "Speaking of investments," I said pleasantly, "Emma has something to return to you." Emma stepped forward, holding out the tablet. "Thank you, Aunt Sarah, but I can't accept this. Mom and Dad taught me that expensive gifts often come with strings attached." Sarah's face flushed. "I don't know what your mother's been telling you, but—" "I've been telling her the truth," I interrupted, pulling out the envelope. "About family, about values, and about real wealth." I placed the envelope on the coffee table. "Since you're so interested in financial matters, Sarah, perhaps you'd like to see what my mother left me." The room went silent as Sarah opened the envelope. I watched her face pale as she read the documents, the trust fund details, the property deeds, the investment portfolios. This can't be real," she stammered. "Oh, it's very real," Michael said, his voice cool. "And so were the things you said to our daughter." Margaret and Thomas, who had been hovering uncertainly nearby, moved closer to see the papers. Margaret gasped softly. "The difference between us, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice gentle, "isn't about money. It's about character. I've had this inheritance for 3 years, but I've never felt the need to flaunt it or use it to make others feel small." Sarah sank onto the couch, the papers trembling in her hands. For the first time since I'd known her, she seemed at a loss for words. "Mom." Emma tugged at my sleeve. "Can we go get ice cream?" I smiled at my daughter, seeing the same quiet strength my mother had possessed reflected in her eyes. "Of course, sweetheart. Would anyone else like to join us?" Margaret and Thomas quickly agreed, both seeming eager to escape the tension. Sarah remained on the couch, staring at the papers as we walked out. As we drove to the ice cream parlor, Emma spoke up from the back seat. "Mom, What you did back there. That was kind of awesome. I caught Michael's proud smile in my peripheral vision. Sometimes, honey, the best way to deal with bullies is to show them that their power is based on false assumptions. But more importantly, I want you to remember that our worth isn't measured by what we own. Like Grandma used to say, Emma asked. Exactly like Grandma used to say, true wealth is about love, kindness, and using what you have to build a beautiful life, not tear others down. The following week brought changes I hadn't expected. Sarah didn't show up for Sunday dinner, the first time she'd missed it in 5 years. Instead, she sent a text to the family group chat saying she wasn't feeling well. No one believed her excuse, but no one called her out on it either. What did surprise me was the email I received from her on Wednesday morning. Kate, I've been thinking about what happened. Would you meet me for coffee? Just us. Sarah. I showed the message to Michael over breakfast. What do you think? He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder to read the email. I think my sister might finally be ready to grow up. I agreed to meet Sarah at a small cafe downtown, deliberately choosing a place far from her usual upscale haunts. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner table. The designer handbag and perfectly styled hair were still present, but something was different. She seemed smaller somehow, less armor-plated. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. Her coffee sat untouched in front of her. Of course. I ordered a green tea and waited. Sarah twisted her diamond ring. The one she always bragged was from her ex-husband's family collection. I've been up most nights this week, thinking about what you said. About character. She took a shaky breath. And about what I said to Emma. That's a good place to start. I was cruel, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been cruel for a long time, haven't I? I nodded, not making it easier for her. This was her moment to own up to her behavior. After David left me, she continued, referring to her ex-husband, I was so angry. He cheated with someone younger, someone who made less money than me. It didn't make sense. I thought if I could prove I was successful, wealthy, better than everyone else, somehow it would fix everything. And I was an easy target, I said quietly. You were everything I wasn't, Sarah admitted. Content with a modest lifestyle, focused on making memories instead of making impressions. Emma adores you. Michael worships the ground you walk on. Even Mom and Dad respect you more than me, though they'd never say it. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. I'm selling the SUV and one of the rental properties. David's lawyer called. Apparently, I wasn't supposed to inherit those properties in the first place. There was a clause in the divorce agreement I overlooked. Sarah? No, please. Let me finish. She straightened her shoulders. I've been living a lie, trying to prove something to everyone, including myself. But watching you the other day, you didn't show me that paperwork to humiliate me. You did it to protect Emma, to teach her about real values. I sipped my tea, letting her words sink in. You know, when my mom left me that inheritance, she included a letter. Want to know what it said? Sarah nodded. She wrote that money is like water. You can use it to nourish and help things grow, or you can use it to drown everything around you. The choice is always yours. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. I've been drowning everyone, haven't I? Especially Emma. God, Kate, I'm so sorry. What I sent to her was unforgivable. You're right, it was, I agreed. But you can make it right. Not with expensive gifts or grand gestures, but with genuine change. Will you help me? She asked, and for the first time since I'd known her, Sarah looked truly vulnerable. I don't mean with money. I mean with learning how to be better. How to be more like you. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That's the first right question you've asked in a long time. 2 months later, we celebrated Emma's half-birthday, a tradition my mother had started that I'd kept alive. It was a small gathering in our backyard, with homemade cupcakes and simple decorations. Sarah arrived carrying a lumpy package wrapped in newspaper, a far cry from her usual elegant presentations. I made this, she told Emma, actually blushing. In that pottery class Kate told me about. Emma unwrapped the package to reveal a slightly lopsided but clearly heartfelt attempt at a jewelry box. Inside was a handwritten note. To my favorite niece, real treasures aren't things we can buy. Love, Aunt Sarah. As Emma hugged her aunt, I caught Michael's eye across the yard. He smiled, raising his glass of lemonade in a subtle toast. Later that night, as I was tucking Emma into bed, she asked, "Mom, is Aunt Sarah poor now?" I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "No, sweetheart. I think for the first time in her life, Aunt Sarah is truly rich. She's finally learning what Grandma always taught us, that the best things in life can't be bought." "Like family?" Emma asked sleepily. "Like family," I agreed. "Especially family that learns and grows together." I closed her door softly, thinking about my mother's words about using money to help things grow. Sometimes the most important growth isn't purchased with money at all. Sometimes it simply comes from learning to see wealth in all its forms, in homemade pottery, in sincere apologies, and in the courage to begin again.